Hola todos, welcome to part 2 of our CRM questions video. No, this will not be as good as Empire Strikes Back as a sequel, but guess what? Decided to break it up into 2. We have 3 articles to go. Our next article here is almost like a toolkit article. They called this a best practices article. But in my head, it's very much in the spirit of toolkit articles. I just want you to take articles like this, the Endowed Progress toolkit article, our toolkit article from last week where we were talking about net promoting value with Professor Kumar, who's now at Georgia State. These are fantastic articles that you can take out of this class and keep them in your file drawer at work. Actually, you should keep the whole set of readings in your file drawer at work. Here, like this, like a big pile. Because who knows? You might keep coming back to them. Nugget after nugget after nugget. Alright, let's get to some questions. Are there any other companies that have used innovative analytic solutions to gain better insights into the way to market to consumers? My opinion, no one is better than Netflix. Netflix does the most amazing stuff with analytics, really. I mean, I really, and I don't even spend any time recommending movies, and yet their recommendations are just ridiculously spot on. But these are the same companies we keep talking about. The brilliant analytic companies, the digital ones, are, of course, Google, of course, Facebook, of course, Amazon, of course, eBay, of course, Netflix. If we start thinking about the Walgreens, the CVS's, the Kroger's, and the Targets of the world. It sounds like a broken record, but if you start doing Google searches or go into that database like you know how to do and start looking at analytics and Target, you'll get articles. But this is not something that people talk about a whole lot. If a company embraces increasing customer equity as a performance goal, it's acknowledged that a marketing tactic that boosts sales in the short term can have a negative effect on customer lifetime value. Well, think about it this way. You could gain a sale in the short term, but lose a customer forever. That's really what they're trying to do. And they want you to develop both the mindset to take the time with the customer and learn, and it's over time. There are many companies out there that only care about boosting sales in the short term. They don't develop relationships. They do all these crazy Black Friday-like deals all the time, and that's the only thing they train or teach their customers to expect from them. Well, then guess what? You can boost short-term sales, but every time you do one of these crazy promos or Black Friday blitzes or anything along those lines, then that's all anyone's ever expecting from you. You really handicap your long-term future. If you have more of a customer lifetime value, you'll do less crazy short-term stuff, but have more consistent revenue stream over the long term. You sacrifice a little bit of the short term to continually build long term. To me, that's a better strategy. I agree that most new product fails. However, it makes sense for a company to overspend on new. Does it make sense? It makes sense for a company to overspend on marketing a new product due to the amount of investment already made and hope the product can get traction. Perhaps. How do you make a decision when it's the correct time to pull the cord and stop pumping in more money? I was involved in a similar situation, new product development, and I felt like people from management were making more emotional decisions. Well, we have a beautiful chart in this article that illustrates this phenomenon that you're experiencing. I'm on page 122, A, B, and C, the chart. Advertising in classic economic sense, you will eventually get to a point of diminishing marginal returns. where advertising will not add anything. Advertising has a wonderful short-term boost. Advertising helps with awareness. Advertising helps even more with new products because there's awareness. But there is some critical inflection point that the curve will flatten. And you will see that in revenue. You will see that. And as soon as you start seeing that curve flatten, as soon as you start seeing, instead of double-digit month-to-month or quarter-by-quarter gains in sales, and you start seeing single digits, as soon as you see the growth slow, you got to pull back the reins on advertising, because advertising is an expense. You overspend on advertising, you mess your balance sheet up. Advertising is an expense. You need to do some of it. There are other companies that kind of correct for this. They say we're going to sell 10,000 units at $100 a unit, and of that $100 per unit, we're hoping to get $30 in margin, but $10 of that 100 is advertising expense. If I'm expecting to sell 10,000 units, I have $10 per unit in total advertising budget, and that way I don't overspend. And as long as you're going quarter by quarter and you keep meeting the targets that, okay, I expect to sell 5,000 units this quarter. Okay, 5,000 units, $100 per unit, $10 per unit in advertising expense. That's how much you're spending. The next quarter, I'm only expecting, it's not a holiday quarter, I'm only expecting to sell 1,100 units. $100 a unit, $10, That's what I would do. See if there's any other nuggets in here that I would want to pull out real quick. I look on page 118 at the top right-hand corner, and this is the short-term versus long-term thing. We're talking about short-term strategy versus short-term tactics versus long-term strategy. I'm a long-term strategy kind of guy. I'm a market orientation kind of guy. Anything else relevant here? Major nuggets. I really like the back end of the article. We start on page 122, the one with this. The cultural change. Focus on customers, but a way that's profitable in the long term. Adapt a perspective. Investing in retail. All these bulleted points here to the end of the article. This is mantra. This is stuff for your journals. This is stuff that you can easily go back and refer to when you're in a meeting and the marketing people are going blah, 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 blah up there on the whiteboard or with PowerPoint, and you could throw the stuff back at them and see if they know how to answer it or not. All right. A one-pager. I'm sure you guys love these one-pagers, right? Why loyalty programs alienate great customers. If I'm not a member of an airline reward program, I will have to pay more than the frequent flyer, but worse service. How can customers accept this? Well, some airline reward programs you have to buy into, or some reward programs are not free. You pay for them. Look at Amazon and what they do with Prime. It's $99 a year. You pay into it. Amazon wants all their good customers to be Prime customers. So much so that they give us free video to do it. They give us free shipping to do it. They tell us what's in it for us, the WIIFM, to be part of Prime. By the way, did you know that since you have a student ID, you can get a student Prime account? Woohoo! $25. It is well worth $25. Trust me. $25. You got a student ID, you get an Amazon Prime account. A student one. It's kind of neat. I have a student one. I'm going to graduate, I think, in a year, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm a member of an elite airline program, will I have to pay more in frequent flyer worth service? Well, they want people to be part of the rewards program, the airline companies, or anybody else for that matter. And they do have better service because they want the data and they want the give and take of a rewards program. Customers can self-select themselves into this program or not. It's up to them. In the example in the article, what's to prevent someone from becoming a Qantas frequent flyer? Maybe they're not super elite status the way they were on American Airlines, but they could have done at least a little better as opposed to, I don't feel like being part of that program. I do not agree that airline companies over-reward the top 2% of customers. Even though the author found that a second tier of customers accounted for the largest revenue earned by airline companies, do we need to consider the costs involved in keeping these 2% customers and the second tier customers before we reach that conclusion? Yes. What happens is that I agree with the author that there's a lot of companies out there that have their top 2 or their top 5%, and they know they're their top 2 or top 5% in volume, but they don't do the heavy-duty analysis with regards to profitability, lifetime value, referral value, to see if this is really, really, really one of our top customers. They just put them in this bucket, and they're there forever. It could be the case that a couple of these customers in the top 2% are so difficult to deal with. I would just like to make sure that companies do their due diligence with all their customer segments. And I want you to think about it. I don't want you to blindly say, oh, she's a top 2%, he's a top 2%, he's a blah, 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 blah. I want you to think about more than just one segmentation variable, because that's what we do with CRM. We segment our customer base. We could do it by revenue, we could do it by volume, we could do it by profitability, we could do it by CLV, but we don't do it by one thing. And that's what I want you to kind of go to. All right. Unlocking the mysteries of your customer relationships. In every module we do this semester, I try to have the articles in the backside of the module the most contemporary with regards to the topic. This is an article I never read before. I actually know Jill pretty well from my time up in Boston. Jill was a doctoral student of Professor Fournier when Professor Fournier was at Harvard, and Jill was also studying at Harvard. Jill went to another school in Boston. She's now back at Harvard as a scholar or I forgot what her category is. But this is a pretty interesting article. This wasn't mind-blowing, because I'm so familiar with their work, and we've read all these other articles, and I've read the other modules going forward, including older stuff that they've written. But I still think it's pretty interesting that here we are in 2014, July, August 2014, and you're still seeing some of the same themes that Professor Fournier wrote in the 1998 article, Preventing the Premature Death of Relationship Marketing. You're seeing the same themes. So don't get freaked out when you see an article on my reading list and it's from 2002 or it's from 1998 or 1999. Sometimes these are seminal articles going forward, and even the most recent articles don't add so much more to the top, But this was a pretty good one. I liked this idea of, if the one big takeaway from this article, a relationship is not a relationship that is not a relationship. You have to think about gradation of relationships, just like the same way you have friends. You have your best buds, you have 2, 3, 4 of those. You have people you really like a lot and you hang out with. Maybe there's like a dozen of those. And then you have like another 30 or 40 these are people I know and they're pretty cool people. You have different gradations of relationships. And that's really where we were getting at with page 74, friends, acquaintances. And they did this very in-depth data collection study, and they came up with multiple different relationships. Some of these categories, villain, victim. If anything, I wish the article just broke each one of these out instead of just by a 2x2 correlation with price premium, correlation with market share. I don't have enough information there. I really wish there was more. All right, let me answer some of your questions. What measures can a company take to cultivate a customer from a stranger all the way to an old friend? Well, it depends on your company and what you do. In the article, for instance, they talked a little bit about Harley-Davidson. Professor Fournier's written multiple case studies and articles about Harley-Davidson. We're going to see some really neat branding stuff next week that goes to this question. But in the case of Harley-Davidson, a stranger might be someone who rides a Harley that is not a member of the HOG Harley Owners Group, and they've never been to a Harley-Davidson rally. An old friend would be someone that not only are they a member of the Harley Owners Group, but they always go to Sturgis, they always do Daytona, they always do Lancona, and the 30 or 40 executives from Harley that are consistently at these events have relationships with these individual customers, and they would be an old friend. Harley is a good example. Jeep and their Jamboree events that they have all the time. My neighbor around the corner has a Porsche 911, and his owners group invited him up to Montreal over the weekend, and they put spiked tires on the 911s and let them race on a river. Giving someone those kind of experiences gets the casual 911 owner to become more of an old friend. Which type of customer-company relationship is the most difficult to maintain for a business? I really don't know, to be honest with you. And that's one of my complaints. We have a typology of, what did they say, 20-something different ones? And, I have a feeling that the correlation with market share, the bottom right-hand quadrant, are the easiest to deal with. Old buddies, teammates, next-door neighbors, former friends, colleagues, marriage partners. That bottom right-hand corner, I got a feeling that they're the best and the easiest to maintain. With the opposite, one-night stands, complete strangers, acquaintance, frenemies, flings, secret affairs, casual acquaintance, villain victims. I got a feeling they're harder. Now, that's my feeling. I wish the article gave me some more detail there. Maybe I should shoot Jill an email. Author talks about combining big data with relational intelligence. How do you achieve this? How do you achieve that? Is this where data mining and analytics come into the picture? Absolutely, positively, yes. So what happens is when we get to big data, and we're going to do the same thing with big data as we did with CRM. We're going to look to the upsides of big data, and we're going to look at the downsides of big data. I think we got 4 or 5 articles, around big data, cloud, and that kind of thing. So what happens is big data is just lots of data. We never really had big data in the past. It was really hard to get that much user information and to also get it all in the same database. Now we have, when they talk about big data, we have, scanner data, that's the data from the cash register, with the loyalty card data, with the credit card data, with the social media data. And we can put this all in one database now. And with that, we can come up with some hypotheses and play with the data to see if something, do I get a stronger effect if I do this? Or is there a stronger effect at 8 p.m. on once a week, once a month, 8 p.m. on Tuesdays? One of the issues with big data is people think that, I'm from like a Google mentality. Google records every search. Well, Google may record every search and they may store every search, but unless they write an algorithm for a particular something, unless someone does a search for a particular something, unless someone comes up with a hypothesis of how to pull certain pieces of data, the data in and of itself does not do anything of this by itself. There's a intelligence, there's a rationale, there's a strategy to why I'm looking at the data a certain way. I don't want to foreshadow too much into that, but I want you to make sure that it's not like just because I have a whole crunch of 18 terabytes of data, that unbelievable insights are going to immediately pop out of this. No, it's the needle in the haystack kind of thing. If you have haystacks and there's a needle in there, but you know where to look for that needle, well, then that's great. But if you have 5 haystacks and only one of them has a needle, then what's the use of having all that big data? All you're doing is having all the data, but you don't know what to search for within that data. Do you think the lack of privacy, for example, companies selling you email information to partners, is another reason why consumers look at what should be relationship builders as junk? Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that line again that we said in the first video. On one side, we have CRM companies that are all one way. I'm the company. I'm saying I'm trying to develop a relationship with you, but all I do is push things at you. I want your information so I can use it, so I can sell it. They're really not providing any value. This is one way. There isn't a win-win here. These are people that are not being honest and ethical about what they're doing with their data, your data, how they're collecting the data, who they're selling the data to. On the other side of the equation, you have the what's in it for me. These are CRM companies that are actually delivering very real value to their customers. They're more transparent. Usually the good CRM companies, you have to self-select into the various levels. You have to, the better expression is opt in. In the United States, with regards to privacy, we have to find in the United States a way to opt out. So when we get our credit card statements and we have that, we get it like once a year or once every 6 months, that really long piece of paper that folds out. And if you want to take your name out of a database, you kind of scan the whole thing to try to find this one address for that you have to write a letter to. There's no phone number, there's no email address that you have to write a letter to say, please take me out of the database or don't sell any of my stuff. They make it hard for us. In Europe and in most other parts of the world, they're not an opt-out culture. They're an opt-in culture, where if you want to be part of something, you have to opt into it. The default isn't you're automatically, if you look at has anyone ever looked at their privacy settings in Facebook? The default for Facebook is wide open. You get a Facebook account, you don't check any of your privacy settings, and the most open they possibly can is what Facebook sets them to. Whereas if we were in Europe, the idea would be you open a Facebook account and the absolute extreme privacy settings would be there, and if you wanted to open them, you would decide to open them. Opt-in versus opt-out. I think that's another good way to look at ethics, Disclosure, opt-in versus opt-out, and how much value the consumer is really getting. The unethical junk people are not transparent. They don't care about opt-in versus opt-out, and they don't tell you a thing. They're just trying to maximize you as an individual from a revenue stream. With respect to training, expecting every employee in marketing or customer relationship, do you know if some companies that may consider this exception, that every employee is a waste of time or resources, given consideration that some or many employees may never come in contact with the customer? Let me read this again. With respect to training or expecting every employee in marketing or customer relationship, do you know of some companies that may consider this expectation from every employee as a waste of time or resources? Well, most companies think that this is a waste of time and resources. Overtraining people outside of the marketing or customer relationship about being customer focused. I obviously don't agree with this. This is a very non-market oriented kind of thinking, to be honest with you. And the best company in the world that does the absolute complete opposite of this is Zappos. Everyone at Zappos. I don't care if you're in accounting. I don't care if you're in HR. I don't care if you're in logistics. You have the same customer relationship ethos as the people that are talking to customers every day. Why? Because you love Zappos, and every time you leave the company, you end up promoting the brand as well. Or you could be in IT or accounting, and because Zappos is market-oriented and they're a flat organization and they really don't have silos, you could very much become part of this quicker than you might think. All right, class. Let me see if there's anything else here that was pretty crazy. Now, this one was pretty self-explanatory. We saw some really great examples in here about failures with regards to loyalty. We keep seeing the Eileen Fisher story. We keep seeing how the CRM databases and the IT department and how they don't work together, like functional silos type language, like on page 79. Jill and Susan, whether they say it or not, are very much in the market-oriented type philosophy. All the negative things they say in this article are about firms or examples of non-market orientation. Well, that's the end of video 2. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. I look forward to doing this in person next week. See ya.